couple of years in the late 2015 to 2019. So I'm really happy to be back. I'm glad Forum is back in person. So really excited to be here. Before I introduce tonight's keynote, I just wanted to give you a little information about our firm. Some students were coming up to me and asking me about Gensler, and so I just wanted to share a little bit with a broader audience. So we are the world's largest design firm. We have 53 offices all over the globe, and we really want to improve the human experience. And we do this through a variety of disciplines, architecture and interiors being our largest, but we have a lot of different avenues of focus, strategy, product design. And the range of the scale of our projects ranges from a wine label to a massive urban district. Our people are at the heart of what we do, and diversity matters at our firm. And we put our people first. We actually have a saying that we are a people-first organization. But we also know that we cannot be global if we are not local first. And that research is a key part of how we improve and continue moving the profession forward. We have a lot of opportunities for students. So as Larry mentioned, I'm Kimberly Tuttle. Kimberly Tigner is at the back of the room, and we are actually part of the Global Talent Development team. I focus exclusively on students. My counterpart focuses on professional development of our team members, and we have scholarship opportunities. We have a lot of student programming that's free and virtual for you all. SDX ran for the second time this year throughout the month of October. Spark is a kind of a continuation of SDX, and that actually launches next week. Virtual free programming for you all, learning about design, hearing origin stories from our practitioners, and hearing from us and our talent folks all about what you need to do to succeed in getting your foot in the door, regardless of where you end up. And then as Larry mentioned, we are the sponsors for this year's in-studio portfolio competition, which I believe Jody said launched earlier this week. So please apply. We would love to see your portfolios, engage with you, and talk with you. You can stay connected with us, specifically our emerging talent group, to understand more opportunities. Our internships launched, applications launched this past week. Spark information is here, scholarship information is here, our summer fellowship, our DSD program, anything that you need to know about being a student and how it relates to you with us here at Gensler, you can find out from our link tree. And so, without further delay, I am really excited to announce tonight's keynote. Jason has become a dear friend and colleague of mine over the past couple of years as he's transitioned into his new role. But Jason is a licensed architect, planner, and a principal in our Chicago office, where he also serves as our Global Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. As a global leader, he promotes Gensler's commitment to its strategies to fight racism, while furthering the firm's efforts to address the low representation, disparities, and unique challenges minority practitioners face across the building design industry through a universal perspective. He's passionate, and I mean passionate, guys. He's here because he's really excited to engage with you and helping develop underserved communities and the next generation of designers, architects, planners, and activists. As a principal based in our Chicago office, he also manages, I don't know how he does it, guys, I really don't. He manages projects too that engage the community at large, leading them from schematic community-based master plans through full construction. His portfolio includes master planning programs centered on cultural connectivity, public transit, and mixed-use development, along with architectural projects spanning hospitality, commercial office, retail, residential, science research labs, and the list goes on. He is driven by the belief that one project can change a community, and if we change enough communities, we can change the world. And he really exemplifies that on a daily basis. His leadership is exemplified through his active engagement in several community-based programs and allied organizations on both a local and national level, which are centered on education, mentorship, diversity, and community service. In In 2021 to 2022, he served as the National NOMA President, where he focused on recruitment, retention, and advancement of minority architects and students. He also currently sits on the executive board for the Chicago ACE, which is the Architecture, Construction, and Engineering Mentor Program, the ACE Mentor, and which is a national nonprofit focused on introducing youth to career opportunities in the building, design, and construction industry across the country. So it's my pleasure. You guys are really going to enjoy his keynote tonight. I'd like to introduce Jason to the stage.
Good afternoon. Or is it good evening now? I need some more energy, same as me, Lee. Good evening. All right. So that video was supposed to play as I walked up on stage, and I should have came from the back of the room and crawled in here. Didn't make me stand up here as long, but no. Appreciate it. Really excited to be here. Thank you for having me serve as your day 2 keynote. So really quickly, what I want to do is very briefly share my journey into architecture, talk a little bit about my matriculation, both between undergrad and grad school, talk about the work that I do, talk about my mission, my why I'm passionate about the things that I do, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about Ginzer and the work we've been doing over the last few years around diversity, equity, inclusion. So does that work? Yeah. All right. So, in terms of background, can we advance? There we go. All right. So, born and raised, Denver, Colorado. Born single parent household, myself and my sister, living with my mom. Denver, Colorado, like most boys, I was super active in sports. And one of the things that we had in my house was called the triple A's: art, athletics, and academics. And my mom wouldn't support anything unless it fell in one of those 3 buckets. And so, like most boys, loved sports, was super active in basketball and football. But basketball was definitely my sport. I actually went on to play my first year in college. But I also had to have a backup plan. Like we always heard that growing up, you need to have a backup plan. And so started to really develop as a youth artist in Denver, where at a very, very early age, I started to sell my artwork. And so oftentimes I would be featured as the youth artist. My mom was serving as my business manager. She would take me around the city or take me around the state. I would sell my artwork at different festivals, street festivals, cultural fairs, church functions. I would sell original pieces. And I would be featured as the youth artist at these events. And what was cool was I was also connecting with some of the local artists who would take me under their wing, and they would work with me and mentor me, teach me on the side how to work with different mediums. And once I got into like 8th grade, 9th grade, I was trying to figure out what my career path was going to be. I was already selling artwork, right? And I'm working with these amazing artists, some that I felt like I could never compete with, right? But most of them really fit that starving artist cliche model. And so I was trying to think through, okay, what can I do? What career path could I follow that is a little bit more specific, right? That is a little bit more straightforward in terms of like that educational process that I could follow, but was also respectable and would be a fruitful career. And so I had an art teacher, 9th grade, that recommended architecture. And for whatever reason, even though I didn't know any architects, and I definitely didn't know any black architects, I decided that I was going to be an architect. And so I ended up going to Howard University, the Mecca. You know, y'all get it. So I ended up going to Howard in Washington, D.C., one of 7 HBCUs that has an accredited architecture program. And that is where I was able to really find my village, find my home. It was an opportunity for me to make a lot of new friends, but it was also an opportunity for me to meet a lot of professors that would become longtime mentors and friends. And so the program at Howard is a 5-year degree program. I actually transferred into Howard. I was mentioning before about basketball, and I was chasing these hoop dreams. You know, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't going to go to the NBA coming out of high school. But as I got into college and I was bouncing from schools, trying to play basketball, the doors weren't really opening for me, but they were opening for architecture. And so when I transferred to Howard my 3rd year, I actually lost the year, so I came in the 2nd year of the program, but it was my 3rd year of college, right? I still wasn't quite sure yet if this is what I wanted to do. I was having a hard time, you know, hanging up those hoop dreams. But it wasn't until my 2nd to last year when I actually went on a study abroad program over the summer with my classmates and some professors where it really solidified for me. And so I'm sharing that with you because I'm not gonna lie, those first couple of years at Howard, I was not applying myself. I was a very average student, doing the bare minimum to get by in studio. And some of my professors knew it. They knew I was just kind of going through the motions. But when I came back from that study abroad program, I knew that this was definitely what I wanted to do. And I was hungry for it, and it showed in my last 2 years in studio and my work. And I was able to graduate from Howard, and immediately I went to Columbia University, where I studied a master's degree in architecture and urban design. So when I was at Howard, one of the things that I really started to focus in on was urban design. I took a couple of urban design courses, and I fell in love with it. I had a couple of professors that were both licensed architects and licensed planners, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be licensed in both disciplines. I want to be able to jump back and forth between the macro and the micro scale and be able to approach sites and projects with like a different state of mind, through a different perspective and strategy. And so went from Howard, and literally I think I finished my thesis in the spring of '05. 2 weeks later, started the program at Columbia, so no break at all in between. Drove my car, went up to New York, and started the program at Columbia. And Columbia was very, very, very different. So you go from Howard, right, an HBCU, historically black college and university, one of the largest and oldest architecture programs, to Columbia, where in my program we had about 40 students. And of that 40, only 6 were from the States. So you want to talk, it was a different type of diversity, right, that I was now exposed to, that I was experiencing. Only 6 of us were from the States. And I had some classmates that were like me, they just came out of undergrad, right, roughly the same age. But then I had other classmates that were in their 30s, mid-30s, had their own practice in Prague, decided they wanted to come, go to grad school, study architecture. These were my classmates in my studio. And what was awesome about grad school was every single project was a group project. So I would tell you, by far, I learned a lot more from my classmates than I ever did from my professors, because I spent so much more time with my classmates, and they were so much more experienced and sophisticated in so many different ways. And I learned so much when I was at Columbia. So after Columbia, stayed in New York for a little bit. I was working at a medium-sized design firm, and those student loans started kicking in. I couldn't afford to stay in New York. I had to move. And I briefly went back to Denver, worked at a small, medium-sized firm, about 60 people, called Clip. Was there for about 9-10 months, and then I moved to Chicago in '07. In Chicago, I started working at HOK. Now, the large, well, you would shout that out. I love you, Kim. In Chicago, I was working at HOK. And I was part of the planning group. And what was interesting, again, I always had this plan of being licensed in both disciplines. HOK hired me as a planner, but I told them out the gate what I wanted to do. I wanted to get licensed in both disciplines. I needed to touch both architecture and planning projects. I was working for HOK for about a year and a half, and at that point in time, it was 95% planning, 5% architecture, and architecture was picking up red lines for some interior projects. I wasn't getting the experience that I needed. So I had to jump ship, I had to switch internally within the office, but I switched over to the architectural practice so I could get that experience, start taking my exams so I could get licensed. Then Ginzer recruited me and pulled me into their Chicago office in 2011. When I came over to Gensler, they hired me as an architect. I finished my exams, I was working there a couple of years, and then I jumped back into planning because I want to get licensed as a planner. And luckily, I had a mentor who had just started. He was building an urban design planning practice in Chicago. His name was Andre Brumfield. And I showed him the work that I was doing at HOK previously, master planning projects all over the world. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to pull you in. I need you on my team. And when that first project opportunity came up, I was able to be part of this studio. And it's been an amazing experience. I'm going to show you a couple of projects, series of projects, some of the things that I do at both skills. So I'm going to show a variety of architectural projects. Most of my projects on the architectural side have been more mixed-use development. So ground level retail, usually commercial office or residential above. But all of it has had a community engagement component to it. I will say a lot of times, especially now at this point in my career, everyone will ask, well, what do you specialize in? What's your specialty? You know, what type of projects do you specialize in? I said, well, now, I don't really care if it's a data center or a community center. If it's in a black and brown community and there's a community engagement component to it, I want to be a part of it. I want to touch it. So those are the projects I typically try to focus on now. And then I'm also going to talk about some of the large community master planning projects that I touch. And this is, again, where I originally started to get drawn in and pulled into urban design. And what I love about urban design is the community engagement component, right? Being able to work with local residents, key stakeholders, the client, the developer. And one thing that you have to be mindful of when you approach this work, especially in marginalized and underserved communities, is that you have two clients. I'm going to tell all of you all right now, you have two clients that you have to serve. You got to serve your contractual client, right? That's the person who has the money, the purse strings, right? Like they're funding the project, they're the one that's hiring you to do this work. But you also have to serve your spiritual client. You have to serve the community, right? Oftentimes who are neglected, not included in the process, right? They're left out. They don't know what's going on in their own backyard, in their own neighborhood, right? Making sure that they're engaged, they're part of the process, that they're informed, and they can see their fingerprints on the design. So you have two clients. These are a couple projects, some of the master planning projects. This is actually Oakwood Shores redevelopment. So I worked on a lot of former Chicago public housing sites all across Chicago, the south and west side of Chicago. This one in particular, large master plan. There was a plan that was done. The former mayor, or the second former mayor, Mayor Kimberly, he actually had a plan for transformation where they actually demolished all of this public housing across the city. And then they were planning to redevelop this land 10 plus years later. The residents have all been displaced, and so there's a lot of animosity, frustration, and anger you have to deal with when you come into these spaces. And there's also a lot of faith building you have to do with the community because they don't trust the development team, they don't trust the designers, they don't trust anyone that's up there that's explaining what's coming down the pipeline, right? So Oakwood Shore is an example of one of them in the historic Bronzeville neighborhood, south side of Chicago. I actually didn't live too far from the site, literally like 4 blocks, so it was actually a key tool that I was able to utilize and say, look, I shop at that Dominic's, I go to that restaurant, I eat over here, I take the Green Line over on the 35th, right? I want them to know that I was part of that community as well when we were doing this work. This is another community master planning project that we did, another former Chicago housing development. The former Harold Ickes, this is actually a little bit closer to downtown, just outside of the South Loop. I now actually really live 2 blocks from this development. But again, this is an interesting site where they came and demolished all the former housing. There's a lot of interest in this site. They're developing it in multiple phases. One thing that was interesting was actually key stakeholder meetings and community group meetings that we had to incorporate and ensure that they were actually part of the design process all the way. And ultimately, it was an introduction of about 1,000 units that they were bringing in with the assortment of, I think, maybe 65,000 square feet of ground level retail, some open recreational space and whatnot. And it's actually right next to a major transit-oriented development. And then, this is actually one of the last projects I did, a planned development that we submitted to the city. This is for Cabrini Green. Raise your hand if you've heard of Cabrini Green. Okay, so Cabrini Green is one of the most notorious public housing developments in the country. And so there's been a lot of interest. It's very divisive across the city between the residents. This is a huge issue around gentrification. I mean, there are so many eyes on this project and every single thing that is developed and built on the site. This is by far probably one of the most contentious community master planning efforts that I've ever been a part of. And it's been just a real struggle, but the team worked on the master plan, the illustrative master plan that you see off to the left. And then we also get to do some of the first phase architecture, which is this high-rise, ground level retail and residential units above mixed income units. So that means you got both affordable housing units mixed in with market rate, mixed in with former CHA, right? And it has to be evenly dispersed throughout the building. You can't differentiate between floors or unit types, right? And so, really amazing experience for me, just getting to really, I would say, well connected with all the major players across the city of Chicago. One of the last planning projects I'm going to show you, master plan, this is actually Woodlawn. This is on the south side of Chicago. And Woodlawn is really interesting. All of a sudden, there was a lot of development, a lot of interest in Woodlawn once they announced the location for the Obama Presidential Center, which is Jackson Park, and it's just on the other side, that green strip of land that you see that's on the right side of the plan. That's Jackson Park. And they announced the Obama Presidential Center right adjacent to it. What happened immediately? All of a sudden, a lot of those brown and dark brown specks that you see across the plan, that's all vacant land. Some of that is city-owned land, some of that's privately owned land. But either way, you had outside developers, not part of this community, coming in and starting to gobble up parcels of land and develop it. So the community, the residents were really worried. They wanted to put a stop. They needed a comprehensive plan in place, right? And so they hired Ginzer. We came in, helped through certain working groups and sessions. We were able to identify some of their target goals, where they wanted to concentrate development, who was going to have access to some of these opportunities, and we were able to develop a comprehensive plan. One of the things that came out of that plan, while we were working on the Woodlawn Master Plan, was a potential project at a TOD, a major intersection and node at 63rd and Cottage Grove, the very end of the Green Line station. It's called Woodlawn Station. And so this was actually one of the first affordable housing projects that I worked on and designed with a very small team. Ground level retail, about 60 units, affordable housing units above. One of the probably like best experiences that I had working on a project from start to finish. And this is actually probably the epitome of what I love to do, right? Take a community master planning project, large community master planning scale project, and then it translates to some of the first phase architecture, and I get to touch both scales, right? This is an example of one of those projects. This is a project that's actually we have in the books. It's called the Ave. This is actually the west side of Chicago, in West Humboldt Park. Similar program. There's actually some job training, retail that's at the ground level. And once again, you have affordable housing, mixed income units that are spread throughout the mid-rise. So this is one project we've been developing. There's our artist mural that we're putting in there right now. That's just a generic image that we have, but we're hoping to engage some local artists and have a way for it to be swapped out and featured every 2 years and updated. So these are some current projects. This is another one. This is actually One Lawndale. So Lawndale is the west side of Chicago. This is actually a very unique project. So Lawndale is composed of primarily Black and Hispanic Latino residents. It's in the middle of a food desert. On the ground floor, you have a huge big box grocer that we're working with a direct tenant. And then above on the second floor, you have the Children's Museum. And so the developer, it's actually two developers coming together, a developer for the grocer, a second developer for the Children's Museum, and we're working with a local nonprofit who is helping us with the community engagement process and pull everything together. So really excited about this. We're actually, through this project, this is Chicago's Invest Southwest program, where you actually apply for grant dollars and it funded, the project was able to go through. So we're working with the development team to help them acquire some additional capital for this project. And then this is one of the last projects, actually, we just wrapped up, I think, the end of BD, literally right before the holiday. This is the Iman Health Clinic Expansion Project. This is on the south side of Chicago. Iman is the Inner City Muslim Action Network. It's a nonprofit organization. They are focused on providing healthcare services for the Muslim population on the south side of Chicago. They have acquired so many parcels of property in this 3-4 block radius, and they already have an existing health clinic that's actually to the left side of this building, and we're doing this expansion project. So really excited about some of the work that we've been doing. But then, so that's 9 to 5, right? Well, what about 5 to 9 or 5 until whenever, right? Well, outside of work, I'm also super involved, engaged, and active. You have the ACE Mentor Program. So I love ACE, and when I moved to Chicago in 2007, I immediately became a mentor. I didn't have ACE when I was in school. I wish I did, because it would have given me such, a head start. But I've been super involved with ACE as a team lead, a mentor. I've served on the associate board. I'm now currently serve on the executive board for the ACE Chicago chapter. But I also, in Chicago, we have a unique program called our Summer Design Build Workshop, where we take some of the high school students in ACE. It's usually not the juniors and seniors. The juniors and seniors, they usually get the summer internships, but maybe it's the sophomores and the juniors. They get to participate in the student design workshop. And these students, over the course of 8 weeks in the summer, it's a paid internship that they get, summer internship, but they get to design, plan, and build an actual project for a local nonprofit organization. We always try, whatever the design is, we try to keep it within realistic terms, also try to avoid having to get a permit, whatever we're doing, but the students get to design and build something that is actually going to stay. What's amazing about that, I'll tell you right now, I know young professionals that probably have 3, 4, 5 years worth of experience out of school, and they still don't have a built project to their name that they can point to that's in their portfolio. These are high school students that are going to come back the next summer, and they have a built project in a local neighborhood that they can showcase in their portfolio. So it's an amazing project. I've served as a summer co-instructor for ACE, and of course NOMA. Kimberly was mentioning NOMA, and Brian, who was here, is coming up as the 2025-2026 NOMA president. You all met Kim yesterday, our current AIA national president. Kim was my predecessor. She served as president of NOMA before me in 2019-2020, and I served as national president in 2021-2022. I've been a member of NOMA since I was a student at Howard University. In fact, I helped resurrect the student chapter, and I served as a student chapter president. I remember being a student, and I had to pick between NOMAS and AIS. I only had like $25 in my pocket. I picked NOMAS. I don't know what happened. Maybe this would have been a little bit different. I picked AIS. But I know that my entire career has literally been connected. I owe it to the relationships that I've built with NOMA. I've served as a student chapter president. When I moved to Chicago, I got involved with the local chapter and served as the iNOMA president. Then I got pulled onto the national board. I served as a university liaison for the Midwest, vice president, and then I was humbly elected as president. I often tell people I was never trying to become the national president of NOMA. That was never a goal of mine. Really, you just kind of like volunteer, you say yes to opportunities, you kind of like put your head down, and then before you know it, you look up and you have all these cheerleaders that are promoting and pushing you to do more, right? That's how I ended up finding myself becoming the national president of NOMA. But I often get asked the question, why? Why, Jason? Why do you dedicate so much time, both during work and outside of work, to these organizations, to the next generation, to developing underserved communities? Why are you so focused on this? And for me, the answer to that question is actually pretty simple. It comes down to family, and in particular, my sister, my younger sister, Lauren. So I had mentioned earlier that both Lauren and I, we grew up in the same household with my mom, right? lower class neighborhood on the east side of Denver. My sister and I were only 11 months apart, but our lives have turned out completely different. I'm not gonna lie to you, my sister has had a really, really hard life. She dropped out of school. She's been in and out of jail. She continues to this day to struggle with substance abuse and depression, and has been going through this revolving door. And my family has tried to step in and support her as best as we can. And my mom really struggles trying to understand, how do you raise two kids in the same neighborhood, going to the same schools, right? Participating in the same after-school programs, and they turn out so different. And for me, it came down to mentorship. I had a lot of amazing mentors that stepped in and really challenged me and motivated me throughout my life. So I mentioned earlier about the artists that took me under their wing, right? Positive examples, coaches playing sports, and even just other men at church and that were connected to our family that saw my family and said, you know what, Jason needs support. And they didn't mean intentionally to neglect or leave my sister out. It was just the assumption that, okay, here's a woman. So my mom is white, my father is black. So here's a woman raising two black kids by herself, right? The girl is okay, she has her mom. The boy doesn't have a male father figure. Let's pour into him. It wasn't intentional, not realizing that we were latchkey kids, right? My mom is working two jobs, trying to put food on the table, do what she can, right? And that we're really, for the most part, at school raising ourselves. But I had mentors that stepped in and would spend time with me, that would show me different things, expose me to different things. And so this is why I'm so passionate about inspiring the next generation, because I know what the power of mentorship can do in changing the trajectory of a child's life. So, last year, about a year and a half ago, I was asked to take on a new role with the firm as the Global Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion by our co-CEOs. It was a random call from our co-CEO, Diane Hoskins. She called me up and asked me if I wanted to take on this role, and I actually said no. The reason I said no was because I was really, really worried. She wanted me to do it 100% of the time, full time, and stop touching projects and doing project work. And I was very, very worried about that, and I'll tell you why. We know that this is a white male-dominated profession, and what I've witnessed in my 17 plus years is that, especially as a minority professional, that you need armor, layers of protection, because no matter what you're doing over here, that is awesome and amazing, somehow people will find a kink in your armor and they will poke holes and point at this, something else that you're not doing. And that armor, right, comes in the form of licensure, certifications. Those are things that people cannot take away from you. And clients and projects. Again, if you outperform in those areas, they can't take that away from you. And I was very worried that if I took on this role, I wouldn't be able to maintain the practice side of the profession, right, as an architect and as a planner. So we ended up working through negotiating, came to a compromise where I can still touch projects 30% of the time, the projects that I want to touch, and then 70% of the time I'm in this new role. And so far, about a year and a half in, it's been an amazing decision. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to show a video which kind of highlights some of the work before I go into more detail, but what I want to share with you is that in this time, everything that the firm has promised me within this role has come to fruition. Everything that I've asked for, I've been granted. They are literally doubling down on their efforts in DEI in a moment when DEI is under attack. And it's very, very easy for some companies to actually step away and back away from promises that they made in the previous years. And Ginzer is paying it forward, and I'll show you how. One thing is that's also important is the firm truly believes in diversity, and this isn't a box that we check. It's a thread that is woven into every aspect of the business, everything that we do, and we truly do believe this.
These are times filled with tension. Tension is necessary for growth, and growth is good.
We believe in the power of diversity. To ensure action and accountability, we created the Global Race and Diversity Committee, led by 5 chairpersons of each strategy.
We also want to ensure that Black and Brown professionals can achieve their full potential at Gensler. We're kicking this off with a variety of efforts, including university outreach, building a robust program to engage diverse consultants and suppliers, and hiring a director of diversity and inclusion.
Our goal is to expose students of color to the design industry so that they can be excited about the prospect that this could be their own career path.
And I'm thrilled to head up our effort to redefine the future of our cities and our communities. One of the things that we're talking about is design in our neighborhoods. And we will build on the work that's been done to date and create a new approach to how we work in some of our most challenged neighborhoods to craft a realistic, implementable vision that balances design, investment, all through the lens of equity.
I'm both excited and proud to work in a new partnership agreement with the audacious goal to increase the number of Black minority professionals tenfold in the next 5 years. Our team here at Gensler will also work with professional organizations and industries outside of architecture and design to ensure broader access to untapped talent and expand cross-promotional efforts as we increase both exposure and career opportunities for Black professionals.
And I'm looking forward to exploring the many ways we can partner with our clients to integrate efforts across our diversity and inclusion programs. We can affect change in all kinds of ways.
And I definitely see a future where we look more and more like communities that we design for, all over the world.
I see a future where each and every one of us shares a common goal in helping to make this world a better place, regardless of background, regardless of how we identify.
I see a future where our strength lives in our differences, not our similarities. Why fit in when you're born to stand out?
I see a future where we can stand proud that we led the way and created a place of opportunity for people of color, for the present and future generations.
I see a future where we use the power of design to impact broad social issues related to equity, housing, food, education, and opportunity. We're the largest design firm in the world. Imagine the impact we can have on the industry to make a difference alongside our clients with shared values. We are the change and we need to own it now.
It's always funny when you hear your voice play back. Sound like that? So these are some statistics that I usually share when I go across the country. I speak. Sometimes I'm visiting Gensler offices. I'm explaining the why behind our strategies. But also when I'm visiting schools or doing various keynotes, once you take a picture of this, these are current statistics. To the left-hand side, you have the U.S. population base. Right down the center, you have the percentage of licensed architects, and then to the right, you have the percentage of licensed interior designers. The reason these statistics are important is because it starts to highlight the large disparity gaps. I'm going to talk a little bit about our 5 strategies to fight racism, but I want you to remember these statistics, and you'll notice that even though the U.S. is more than 50% women, they barely make up just more than 23% of licensed architects in the industry. And then when you look at the percentage of Black architects, you'll see that that is the largest disparity gap, with Black architects still hovering around 2%. And Black women don't even make up 0.5%. So when you talk about the largest disparity gap, it's actually really with Black women. So our focus, one of the things that we do at Gensler, we believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. And if you focus on the population group that needs the help and the support the most, all other underrepresented groups are going to be able to benefit from the mind shift, the resources, the programming, the things that are put in place to support that group. And we believe this, and we actually have been studying it with our statistics, of which I'm going to show you here shortly. But important statistics to measure. I think one thing that we should also recognize is that the future is now. It's not just this altruistic thing. It's not just the right thing to do. There's a huge business case about building diverse teams. And you all coming into the industry, right? Millennials, Gen Zs, coming into the industry, you all have grown up in a very, very inclusive world. You are expecting your companies and the workforce to be just as diverse, your leadership to be just as diverse as the communities that you come from. And so in order for firms like Ginzer to remain attractive to young, great talent, we have to be representative and reflective of that same type of diversity. So huge case. When you look at statistics over time, you'll see that population growth, the boomers have slowly started to age out, and we're growing more and more diverse with Gen Z. So the statistics are showing again that the workforce is growing more and more diverse, and we have to be very, very intentional with this type of work. So, sorry, Kim. You good? Okay. Jason, can you send me the slides? Yeah, no problem, Kim. Yeah. So in 2016, 2015, 2016, I would say, there was a DI wave that started to build. I remember when we were on the board, there was NOMA was starting to get a lot of traction. We were starting to get a lot of organizations reaching out to us. There was this little wave that was building, right? And we were really excited about a lot of the partnerships that we were building in that moment. We're actually worried about missing our window, and then there was the murder of George Floyd in 2020, where it exploded. It exploded across the country. Every company, organization had to have a definitive stance on DE&I work, right? Their position, their mission statement, what was their focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so it was in this moment where Ginzer did a couple of very, very bold things. One of the first things that we did was we created our 5 strategies to fight racism. I want you to notice that you would be hard-pressed to find another company or organization that talks about racism directly, right? Companies don't talk about racism. We built 5 strategies to fight it. We call it out as an issue and as a problem. Most companies, organizations will tippy-toe around it. It's taboo, it's very charged. No, we're saying racism exists, systemic racism exists, and we are trying to fight it as an organization and as a company. The other thing that we did in this moment, 2 of the 5 strategies are specifically focused on the Black population. Strategy 2 is focused on Black students, and strategy 4 is focused on Black professionals. That was also a very controversial and brave thing to do, right? Because automatically, like just a knee-jerk reaction is, well, okay, well, what about me? I'm not a Black professional, I'm not a Black student. Does that mean I don't care, I don't matter? Is that what that means? Is that the message that you're sharing? And that's not it at all. You saw those statistics that I shared, right? That large disparity gap, and we're talking about this rising tide lifts all ships. You know, what if I told you over the last few decades that for Hispanic, Latinos, and Asians, the number has gradually been increasing incrementally, but it's been increasing over time, whereas Black professionals has remained flatlined at 2% since the 70s and 80s. So we're recognizing an inherent systemic problem, and we're trying to focus on the largest disparity gap that needs the help and resources the most. And we're doing it through a couple ways. I'm going to kind of fly through these and show some examples. They talked about it a little bit on the video. The first one, the strategy, it's kind of split in 2. It's focused on our recruitment efforts, bringing in diverse talent, and then our retention efforts, right? Keeping diverse talent once we have it. So something else that we did in 2020, 2021, we put out a diversity report publicly. We actually did a snapshot of our metrics and we shared that with the industry. And this was a brave thing for the firm to do. Why? Because our numbers weren't that good. If they were good, I promise you would have saw them a very long time ago. But what we did was we said, you know what, we're going to do a snapshot of the firm. We want to get a breakdown and understand what is the makeup of our workforce through a couple different lenses: gender, race, ethnicity, and LGBTQ plus representation. And so we did this diversity survey, we pulled out these numbers, we shared it publicly with our peers, with our clients, and we said, hey, we know these numbers aren't great, but hold us accountable. We want you to hold us accountable. We've created these 5 strategies to improve these numbers. Check in with us in 6 months, in a year, 2 years. We're going to be making progress here in this, right? That's accountability. And as a result, you're now seeing more and more firms actually start to share their metrics, their numbers around diversity. So we're creating more transparency. Now, we weren't the first architecture firm to share our metrics, but we were definitely the first large firm to share our numbers. And then if you compare those statistics to one of the last reports that we produced, again, what we've noticed is that we have had a huge increase in the hiring and appointments of women and other underrepresented minorities. So again, even though we have 2 of our 5 strategies focused on the Black population, we've still seen increases, significant increases in promotions and new hires for the Hispanic Latino community, the Asian community, and other underrepresented groups. So we have the statistics that are proving that this mind shift, this focus that we're doing is benefiting underrepresented communities across the firm. Strategy 2, creating educational opportunities. So we're doing this in a couple different ways. I mentioned earlier that I attended Howard University, a historically Black college and university. Well, the reason HBCUs are important is because currently there are about 134 colleges and universities across the country that have an accredited architecture program. 134. 7 of those schools are HBCUs. These 7 schools that are highlighted and listed here produce more than 1/3 of the Black students that graduate and enter the workforce every single year. So for Ginzer, when you talk about the preservation and support of a valuable pipeline, the HBCU is one of the first places that we started. And so Kimberly was up here very quickly sharing some of the work that they've been doing, she's been doing through our talent development team in this space. There is a laundry list of programs and scholarships that we built out. There's some intentional programs that we have focused on with the HBCUs, like our student design charrette and the known as HBCU PPP. And there's also a variety of scholarships and internships and fellowships that we've been promoting and building over the course of the last few years. So again, a lot of this information you can find on our website, or you can find myself, Kimberly Tuttle, or Kim Tickner in the back of the room after this talk. And then also engaging with other organizations, allied organizations like NOMA and Project Pipeline. This is a photo in Chicago. What I love about Pipeline is, at least in Chicago, is the program is catered to middle school students. But when you go and you participate in the camp, this is a 5-day camp. When you participate in the camp, you can actually physically see the pipeline, because you have the middle school students that are there. They're learning about design, space, and scale for the first time, right? But then you have high school students. Sometimes they're ACE students, or students that are alumni of the program. They're kind of serving as junior counselors, helping the students through the exercises. Then you have college students like you who are part of NOMAS and AIS. Well, they're kind of like the camp counselors. They're running the camp. And then you have young professionals that are there, and they're really just making sure everything goes smoothly. They're checking the students in with the parents, right, and making sure everything is good. But what's awesome is I get to show up, and I'm no longer oppressed or worried about trying to inspire that 7th grader, right? No. That 7th grader is connected with that high school student, and they're going back and forth and engaging and building a relationship over the course of the 5 days. And that high school student is able to connect with you, right, the college students, and start to ask questions like, what school are you going to? Did you have a portfolio? Do you like what you're studying? What studio culture like? Did you have a scholarship? How'd you go about doing that, right? And then the college students are able to connect with the young professionals. How'd you get your first internship? Are you in a big firm or a small firm? Do you like what you're doing? Should I change my major? Should I go run for the hills, right? They're able to ask us questions, and it's an authentic mentorship. It's this pipeline that's built over the course of 5 days. It's really amazing to see. And then there's some programs that we're doing internally. So we're doing the test pilot right now called GAP. It's the Ginzer Apprentice Program. And so our friend John Baker was up here yesterday from NCARB's president, talking about the alternative paths to licensure, right? He has an amazing story to be a fellow. Less than 3% of licensed architects through AIA are part of the College of Fellows. He's not only a fellow, but he's also a principal at DLR Group. He does not have a degree in architecture, right? He went the non-traditional path. Well, I didn't know about this non-traditional path. I didn't know that there were 17 states and U.S. jurisdictions that do not require you to have a degree. I told you before that I've been a long time mentoring ACE, right? For 16 plus years now. And unfortunately, there are hundreds of students that I've mentored that didn't go on to college, and I lost track of it. If they didn't go on to study planning or architecture and design, unfortunately, I didn't have an alternative path to direct them. And they ended up going off and doing something completely different. I wish I would have known about these alternative paths. I wish I would have known that I could have steered them and directed them still towards a career and profession in design. So one of the things that we're doing in Chicago is exactly that. We have 4 gappers. They're actually listed here. The brainchild of the program is Kelly Westwood. She's holding her daughter in the picture. but we have 4 gappers. They have 0 college experience. Some of them are like fresh out of high school. Another one actually just finished service in the military, but they know they want to be architects and designers. And so they're with our Chicago office working part-time, 32 hours for 2 years. And over the course of the 2 years, they're doing about 6 8-week rotations with every single practice area we have in the office. They're working with every group, and I mean every group. They're getting exposure to the full business. They're doing an 8-week rotation with our marketing team. They're doing an 8-week rotation with the finance team. They're doing an 8-week rotation with HR, and of course all the other studios, right? Urban design, data analytics, interiors. And at the end of that 2 years, they get to make a decision. They get to say, okay, this is definitely what I want to do, and I want to work full-time at Ginzer. We'll bring them on, we'll find a position, and they'll go the non-traditional route towards licensure. They can say, all right, this is confirmation that I want to go into design, but maybe I want to focus on something specific, and I want the college experience. And so we'll try to connect them with the local school or university, right? And see if we can get them in there and maybe offer them a scholarship to offset some of the costs. Or they say, screw this, I don't want to do none of this, I want to do something completely different, but at least they are not saddled with 6 figures of student debt to make that decision, right? So it's a test pilot that we're running in Chicago. We're really, really excited about it. There are a lot of eyes on it, both internally within Ginzer, other offices that want to explore and do something similar, and then of course across the industry. But keep an eye out on our GAP program. We're really, really excited about it. Strategy 3 is focused on the work that we're doing, right? How are we engaged in underserved and marginalized communities? So at Ginzer, we have the Ginzer Research Institute. In fact, the GAP program that I just shared with you actually came through. It was an application, it was a submission, where when you work at Ginzer, you can apply for a research grant. And depending on the program, if it's approved, you actually get funding to study something further for a year. That's how GAP was created. Well, we originally had 5 categories, but in 2020, we created a 6th category around equity. And over the course of the last 3+ years, there has been some amazing research all across the firm that has been built out and developed by some amazing talented minds across the firm. This is actually translated into real work, real projects. Some of this is pro bono, some of this is low bono, some of this is full service design fees, right? But there's a focused intention to do the work in these communities. So we're really excited about what's coming out of Strategy 3. Strategy 4 is about building stronger relationships across the industry with allied organizations. Ginzer has an MOU partnership agreement with NOMA. Of course, I've kind of like worked out this deal, right? Of course, I'm going to play both sides. But what's awesome about it, we worked out this MOU partnership agreement. It's the first one that NOMA has with a large firm. And through this sponsorship, Ginzer not only covers sponsorship for the conference every fall, but it also covers membership dues for all active NOAA members, both local and national dues, in addition to the 1 membership due that most firms will cover. So they're technically covering 2 if you're a NOAA member. Also, there's a dedication of 15% of all of our U.S. summer internships are reserved for NOMA's members. So this is, again, we're trying to find a way to build that value add for students making a decision and joining NOMA's. And then there's also some additional programming that we built in place where there are strong partnerships at the local office level with the local chapters. So there's a lot that's happening there. And then we're also doing work with IIDA, Interior Design Association. And we're excited about this. They have a program that they just created called Design Your World. Same intention as Project Pipeline, same intention as ACE, trying to expose young students and underserved communities to career opportunities in design. And so they are opening a new chapter in different cities. And so Ginzer's commitment is everywhere that they open a chapter, we have an office and boots on the ground. We make a monetary donation, we open up our office, and we also provide volunteers to support and help them run the program. And so we're excited about that. I think we don't have one in St. Louis, that's why Chicago, Miami's highlighted, but I believe this next year they're opening their 4th program somewhere in Texas. We have like 5 offices in Texas, I'm pretty sure we got that one covered. So there's also work that we're doing with the alliance organizations, right? Of course, AIA, AIAS, our longtime involvement in support of AIS, work with ACSA, NCAR, NAB, really trying to be very intentional with the work we're doing in this space. Last one, Strategy 5, This is working with our clients, right? How do we help and partner with our clients in diversity, equity, and inclusion? And so this is not about projects. This isn't about projects at all. Projects is strategy 3, right? This is how do we work with our clients to help them advance their own DI goals. I mentioned before in 2020 where every company had to make a definitive statement and position around DE&I, right? Half of our companies, half of these clients have their mission statement on their websites, and we're able to follow up with them, and we really want to ask them how can we support them reach their goals. And what we're realizing in these conversations is that some of our clients are very, very sophisticated. In fact, we're learning from them. They're a few steps ahead of us. Some of our clients are in the same boat as us. We're kind of working and moving together. And then we have some clients that are a few steps behind us, and they're afraid to take that first step. And so we're trying to help them through that process. This is what we're doing around Strategy 5, but there's a lot of intentionality that's tied into it. And then lastly, this is probably one of the biggest challenges that my team faces, is how do we approach DE&I outside of the US? So again, Ginzer is a global firm. Yes, we're a US-based firm and founded in the US, but we're a global firm. We have 53 offices. 20 of those offices are outside of the US. And DEI takes on a very, very, very different tone when you step outside of the US. It's very nuanced, it's very complicated. You have to be careful how you approach it. I remember I was on the phone and I was talking with someone in our Latin American office, one of our Latin American offices, and I was asking them how they were coming along with the 5 strategies to fight racism. And the response that I got was, we don't have racism down here, right? Everybody's the same. Well, I disagreed with them, but it was an opportunity to have a very honest conversation and explain that, you may not think you have racism as this white, black, US construct that you see, but you definitely have other systemic forms of oppression that need to be discussed and dismantled, right? Whether that is colorism, sexism, classism, homophobia, there are a lot of things you can start to identify and unpack in Latin America. Or how do we approach something like sexism in our 3 offices in the Middle East, where there are components of that are tied into their culture, right? It becomes very, very nuanced and complicated. We have to be mindful that we don't step into this space, right, with our westernized view and approach and just, enforce it or lay this on the table. We have to facilitate these conversations, provide the resources, and try to find a way to just have a bigger, broader conversation and support around this. So this is the work that we're doing. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for allowing me to address you today.